Thank you all for being here today. 1 year ago today, Lion Air Flight 610 crashed into the sea shortly after takeoff from Jakarta, Indonesia. All 189 people on board perished. 5 months later, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 departed Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Just like Lion Air Flight 610, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 experienced problems shortly after takeoff and crashed. All 157 persons on board died. Both of these accidents were entirely preventable. We cannot fathom the pain experienced by the families of those 346 human beings who were lost. Many family members are here today, and we appreciate their attendance. I appreciate many of them meeting with members of the committee over time. As chairman of this committee, I promise their loved ones that we are working to obtain a full answer as to how to prevent future tragedies. These families deserve answers, accountability, and action, and the public deserves no less. The type of aircraft involved in both accidents is a 737 MAX 8 manufactured by Boeing. International aviation safety regulators began grounding the MAX the day after the Ethiopian crash. On March 13, Federal Aviation Administration formally grounded the aircraft in the United States. The MAX's return to service is contingent on Boeing's work with the FAA to test and certify fixes to the MCAS flight control system, which activated during both crashes. In order for the MAX to return to service, international regulators also need to be satisfied that it is safe to fly. As the certification process continues, many questions remain about Boeing's actions and the FAA's actions during the design, development, and certification processes, as well as the operation of the MAX. Today's hearing is divided into two panels. Let me note for senators that the committee will follow regular order in recognition of both panels. The 5-minute rule will be observed strictly because we have so many people who wish to participate. On the first panel, Dennis Muhlenberg, President and CEO of Boeing, will testify on behalf of the aircraft manufacturer. He is accompanied by John Hamilton, Chief Engineer for Boeing Commercial Airplanes, who will provide technical expertise. Our second panel will examine these issues from the government's perspective. The witnesses today include National Transportation Safety Board Chairman Robert Sumwalt and Chairman of the Joint Authorities Technical Review, or JATR, Chris Hart. Chairman Sumwalt oversees the NTSB, which recently released a report and recommendations regarding the MAX certification. Chairman Hart led the JATR, an FAA-commissioned body that included the FAA, NASA, and 9 foreign aviation safety authorities tasked with reviewing the MAX's flight control systems. The JATR has submitted a broad range of recommendations to the FAA. Let me note that Chairman Hart has extensive past government service in aviation safety, but he is a private citizen today who agreed to lead the JATR. We have many concerns that Boeing should address today. We need to know if Boeing and the FAA rushed to certify the MAX. In particular, critics have focused on the MCAS development and testing. The JATR criticized Boeing's communication with the FAA on MCAS's development, particularly after the system was modified to activate at lower airspeeds. The JATR also criticized the FAA for relying on outdated regulations, guidance, and certification procedures, and failing to incorporate realistic human behavior factors into its assumptions. The NTSB also called into question Boeing's and FAA's assumptions about pilot reaction during MCAS activation. These questions were especially important for stressful situations with multiple alerts going off in the cockpit. Our witnesses should address the company and safety regulators' actions regarding MAX certification in general and MCAS in particular. The process for certifying the MAX necessitated a close partnership between Boeing and FAA. Under a decades-old system called Organization Design Authorization, or ODA, the FAA has delegated certain certification activities to the ODA holder, in this case, Boeing. While the ODA has been used to certify many aircraft over the years, some have criticized the system for permitting an inappropriately close relationship between companies and their safety regulator. Indeed, email correspondence dating from as early as 2015 between the MAX's former chief technical pilot, Mark Faulkner, and FAA personnel released on October 18 reflect a disturbing level of casualness and flippancy that seem to corroborate these criticisms. I was disappointed to learn of a November 2016 instant messenger conversation between Mr. Faulkner and a colleague in which he acknowledged misinforming the FAA. Boeing should have notified the FAA about that conversation immediately upon its discovery. Although FAA is not testifying today, let me express my frustration with the agency's lack of responsiveness to my request dating back to April of this year for documents relevant to the 737 MAX as part of the investigation that I opened as chairman based on whistleblower disclosures. The relationship between regulating agencies and organizations they regulate is important, but so are the internal reforms that Boeing is implementing. Witnesses should provide their views on the ODA system and whether or not reforms are needed. I invite Mr. Mullenberg to describe the steps Boeing is taking to improve aviation safety and to ensure that technical experts never experience undue pressure to put profits and relationships ahead of safety. The committee's oversight is not limited to past actions. The reviews by both JATR and NTSB note that future aircraft systems are likely to be even more complex and interdependent than current models. Managing interfaces between humans and machines will become even more important as automation increases. At the same time, commercial aviation is set to continue expanding around the globe. Many future pilots will fly in countries without the same training requirements and safety standards that we have in the United States. We welcome the witnesses' thoughts on how to improve design, development, and certification in the future to account for these major changes. This hearing will by no means end our inquiry. Additional oversight hearings will be held. The committee will carefully review the final Lion Air report, which was released on Friday, as well as the Ethiopian Airlines report, which is forthcoming. The committee will also consider the findings and recommendations from JATR, NTSB, and all other investigations and reviews. I now recognize the distinguished ranking member, Senator Cantwell, for her opening statement.
Thank you, Mr.